From Righteous to Villain by Corti. Chapter 21. Briefing. The hideout felt different now. It wasn't the place itself. It was the same wooden walls, the same dim candlelight flickering on their wall-mounted slots, and the same rickety chairs that creaked under my weight when I sat down on them. It was the atmosphere and my thoughts that made it feel different. And Lyra, she had changed, and I wasn't sure if it was for the better. However, I couldn't blame her for it. 5 days had passed since we learned the truth about her father and what he planned to do. Then, another 5 days since, the man had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only the stench of his act. We just couldn't find him. What was a second shock for her was the news that her mother too was gone. But this time we had news and proof of her, and she didn't just disappear into thin air. Instead, she fled without a word, abandoning her daughter and the crumbling remnants of their life, emptying their home of everything. When I told Lyra the news, I had expected tears, anger, a reaction, something. But she had taken the news with a chilling calmness, her face remaining passive while listening to me. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just nodded once and then went back to whatever she was doing, which, more often than not, was staying close to me and watching me silently. Sometimes it was too close. She followed me everywhere now, becoming a silent shadow trailing my every move. Not even a puppy was this clingy. If I sat, she sat nearby. If I walked, she walked a step behind me. She barely spoke to anyone else, not even to Kravik or the others who tried to engage with her. Any time someone talked to her, Lyra's answers were clipped, her tone flat, her eyes constantly darting back to me as if to make sure I was still there. She only trusted me now, and I didn't know what to do or how to handle this new and weird development. It was unnatural. I knew it wasn't healthy, it wasn't normal. But how could I tell her to act differently when I barely knew what to do myself? I wasn't her father. I wasn't even her friend, not really. I was just someone who had been there when the world had crumbled around her. And now she clung to me like I was the only solid thing left in her life. Maybe I am. I thought to myself one day, watching her sleep. For now, I let her stay close. What else could I do? I did fear that if I told her to leave, she would do so, and do something stupid. So I kept myself composed as best as I could and adapted. Even though this all happened, the real problem wasn't Lyra. It was her father. 5 days, and still no sign of him. If the man had skipped town, someone should have seen him. The crows had eyes everywhere, in the taverns, the markets, the docks. Yet there was nothing. No sightings, no whispers in the underground, no trail to follow. Just the void. As if he didn't exist. And that didn't sit right with me more and more. I had seen enough of this and my previous world to know that people didn't just vanish. Not unless someone wanted them to. And if someone had gone into trouble to hide Lyra's father, it wasn't out of kindness. And I was part of the gang that had a reason to make him go away. Whenever I thought of that, my gut churned at the idea. I had to admit, I didn't trust the crows anymore. But I trusted the guild even less. If they were behind this, if they were holding Lyra's father in reserve as some kind of pawn. Then a storm was brewing around me. I shook my head, forcing the thought aside. Speculation wouldn't help me. I needed a plan to ensure I wouldn't be swept away when the storm hit. But for now, all I could do was wait. I needed more information. Risa's office was packed to the brim when I arrived. This time, even Lyra understood she couldn't come, so I managed to leave her back home, promising I was going to return soon. Ha. Once again, I was burdened to take care of someone instead of myself. Was I cursed? For some reason, the weekly meeting had drawn a large crowd of lieutenants, enforcers, and trusted members of the Crows. More than I had ever known was part of the syndicate. I stood near the back, and I could feel the tension in some of the others' eyes. Something big was going on, that was for sure. First order of business, Risa began, clapping once, silencing the murmur amongst us all. She surveyed the gathered criminals, including me, speaking in a serious tone. The brothel situation. Of course, murmurs rippled through the room while I kept my composure, waiting for her to resume. It was handled, Risa continued, making me blink my eyes in surprise. What? Just like that? The previous owner has skipped town to a faraway land. The place is under new management, one of ours. No loose ends. Some of the others chuckled darkly, but I didn't. So, we just offed him. The crows had killed him without thinking about it, huh? Fine. I didn't give a damn about that bastard, but what she said next did set off alarm bells in my mind. As for Lyra's father, here it came. Without thinking about it, my body tensed. He probably got spooked. He ran, same as the mother. She sighed, leaning forward on her desk, fingers interlaced. Whatever, good riddance. Not our problem anymore. It's not our problem anymore. The case was closed just like that. My fists curled at my sides, drawing it behind my back to hide it from view. This wasn't right. They didn't just lose people in this city. If Lyra's father was still breathing, someone had seen him. But instead, the crows had nothing. No, giving up so easily without finding him had to mean we did. And Risa lied to me because we probably made sure he was gone. Otherwise, would she give up so easily? Maybe. Maybe not. My guess was on the latter. Still, I said nothing. This wasn't the time to push it right before everybody. But then again, Laszlo's words echoed in my mind all of a sudden. If there was someone the crows who didn't want you to find him, they'd make sure you never did. Had Risa made him disappear? Or was it the guild? Either way, I decided then and there that I was done being strung along. But before he could think on it further, Risa continued. And then came the real bombshell for the night. This next part is for our inner circle only. Risa's tone shifted, taking on a more serious weight when it was only a few of us in her inner room. I wasn't supposed to be here, but as the one who had made it possible, I was invited as a reward. It felt weird. What did I do? Still, seeing the seriousness of Risa's expression, all the usual chuckles died down, and the posture of everyone present subtly stiffened. It was clear we weren't talking about petty crimes anymore. This was something dangerous. I've been going over the documents Auriel found, Risa began, pulling out a stack of papers and a folded parchment and tapping them against her desk. And I've finally confirmed it. Of what? Kravik asked. There's an elven artifact hidden in this region, and we are going to get it. For the first time in my life, I saw real shock on the faces of everyone present. Probably I was the only one who couldn't assess the seriousness of the news. An elven artifact, and? So? Seeing how they all got so fidgety, I almost felt as if they said there was a bomb, ready to go off at any moment, hidden in the city. What I did know was that we didn't deal with artifacts, not just because they were rare and valuable beyond reason, but because anything elven always came with a curse, either literal or political. I remember hearing Kravik say that the last known artifact falling into human hands caused a 200-year war. God smack me, someone muttered under their breath while I heard others shift uncomfortably. I looked at Kravik, who also ran a hand over his shaved head, whistling. Then it hit me, and my blood ran cold. It was as if the pieces snapped into place so fast it nearly made me sick. The guild also knew. That was why Laszlo had approached me. That was why they'd suddenly offered me a free return with no penalties and no grudges. They were after the same thing, and they thought we had it. Or they suspected us of having it. And if I didn't join them willingly, they would use Lyra's father to frame the crows as slavers, to turn the entire city against them, ensuring the guild could wipe them out completely without anyone complaining. A perfect play. Fuck. Too perfect. An actual hostile takeover. Suddenly, I felt sick. This whole time I had thought that I still had time, that I could figure things out and navigate my way through this mess. But now, I had no time. Fucking hell, can't I catch a break? Must I always end up in an organization where things go south? Thinking about it, my instincts screamed at me louder than they ever had in either of my lives. They were repeating over and over, "You need to leave." Now, to force my face to keep my true thoughts hidden from Risa, I clenched my jaw, staring down at the candlelit table where she laid out her plans to acquire it. The others were talking over each other now, speculating and wondering what kind of artifact it was and how much it could be worth. None of them realized what I saw in Risa's eyes for a fleeting moment before our gazes met, and she managed to hide it away. She wasn't going to sell it. She wanted it. Double fuck. I had seen how these kinds of fights ended. The guild wasn't just going to let the crows have this artifact. And if it wasn't the guild, who would get it? It would be worse. Even if we do obtain it, or more precisely, if Risa gets it, she may leave no witnesses to the fact. If I stayed to see this through, I would be caught in a war. And I was the newest guy here, the least important and the most easily sacrificed pawn. I had to leave. But how? I couldn't just run now. Risa would know instantly. She might even take it as a betrayal or as a danger to her plans. She needed us to get it, but if she smelled that any of us tried to run or go for it, I would bet my life on the fact she would end us before getting to the city's gates. No, I had to do this carefully. First, I would need to gather supplies and find a route out of the city without alerting them. One that neither the guild nor the crows controlled. And yes, I should go and get Lyra prepared without tipping off anyone. I can't leave her behind. Who knows what they would do to her just out of spite? Okay. I still had days, at most, before things spiraled out of control. To collect my focus, I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to stay still. To pretend like everything was fine, and I was just nervous about the fact that an elven artifact popped up from nowhere. Relax, Kravik grinned, patting my back. It will be a piece of cake. Sure, I muttered, forcing a smile. I can already taste it. Yum. Chapter 22. Planning. Risa had gone through her plan, or at least some part of it. She never shared with us where we would go, but we knew enough. She gave us 2 days to prepare, so I had no time to waste. By the time I exited the meeting, I was already formulating a plan that would end up in me and, well, Lyra to disappear. This got way too dangerous, and even if I couldn't really comprehend what an elven artifact would do, by the simple reaction of anyone who knew about it, I understood that I wanted out. I am not going to stay here and get killed because of someone else's greed. It took me a few hours to put things together, and I knew my plan was shaky at best, but it was the best I could do in such a short time. When I explained everything to Lyra, she listened silently, saying nothing, and when I was about to begin convincing her, she simply nodded. I'll do as you say. It was the only thing she said. It felt weird. I wasn't used to it. Usually people didn't listen to my requests or plans, or if they did, they presented them as their own. But she didn't ask questions. She simply showed that she trusted my decision and followed my instructions, which meant she left the city before even the following morning had arrived. We made sure that even if I was being tracked or watched, it would seem like it was her idea to simply go away. Slipping out of our current room in the middle of the night, if anyone would ask, I would say she merely left. With how she was in the past few days, nobody would ask questions. Maybe Kravik would feel bad, thinking we were a pair or something, but this was the best way. I couldn't leave her behind, and I didn't want to put her in danger either, and she understood that. It was she who suggested the place we should meet, showing it to me on a map that I had memorized, promising that I would be there in 3 or 4 days. At most. I hoped. Because my next step was to visit the Adventurers Guild. The moment I stepped into the guild's headquarters, I already knew how this conversation would go. It wasn't because of my arrogance, or because I knew it by reading people like a mentalist. It was a certainty because they were waiting for me to do precisely this. So I had played my part well, giving them just enough reason to believe I was a young man in over his head, desperate for a way out. And if there was one thing powerful men loved, it was thinking they held all the control. I experienced that part a lot with the type of bosses I served, climbing the pointless corporate ladder. Reagan, the guildmaster, welcomed me into his office, sending everyone else out except the same man who found me a few days ago, Laszlo. Reagan himself sat in his usual spot. His fingers were interlocked as he studied me with an indifferent gaze. At first, that quickly gave way to a warmer, more welcoming smile. Still, not fast enough. I knew he was simply playing his part. My eyes quickly moved from him, not wanting to make him think I was brave enough to pull a trick on him. Instead, I looked over him, watching the massive tapestry on the wall at his back, depicting the guild's founding, its threads shimmering with gold and silver. It was blocked from my view when Laszlo stood behind him, leaning against the wall, arms crossed, watching me with a slow blink. He gave me the usual smirk, as if he already knew everything that would come out of my mouth. Well, he didn't, because I was about to play them both. I stood with my hands clasped behind my back, hiding my trembling, keeping my voice steady but not enough so the cracks in my voice wouldn't be noticeable. Luckily, I didn't need to act. I was close to pissing myself for real. So it was an authentic performance. I'm done with the crows, I want out. I see. Reagan's brow lifted slightly, but there was no suspicion, just mild curiosity. And why is that? He asked with his tone even, acting as if he wasn't the one who sent Laszlo to find me. They're getting reckless, I said, letting my honest frustration seep into my words, and I don't want to be there when they eventually burn. They are over their head. Laszlo let out a low chuckle, pushing off the wall and walking forward to stand beside the guildmaster. Smart boy. But you know leaving them won't be easy. They don't take kindly to deserters. You told me to consider it, no? I forced a wry smile, my fingers tightening behind my back. That's why I'm here. We all know that we know. So, do you want the artifact? I can lead you to it. But I need something in return. True, let us be honest here. Reagan leaned forward slightly, the light catching the silver streaks in his otherwise jet-black hair. Go on. We are listening. My adventurer rank stays. My name remains clear, not just here but everywhere on the continent. I don't want to be blacklisted, marked, mentioned, or in any way, shape, or form considered as an unwanted element. ... There was a brief pause, and then Reagan gave a slow nod, his smile widening. That's reasonable. But how do we know you're not leading us into a trap? A trap? I snorted, and I didn't hesitate to continue. Because I want nothing to do with the crows or any elven artifact anymore. I never wanted it in the first place. Risa's already suspicious of me. If I stay, I'm dead. I am not stupid enough to miss the fact that a gang leader will make those in the know disappear. I need an out, and you need the artifact. I'm offering you both. And, well, it wasn't a lie per se. They do say that the best lies are built upon half-truths. ... Reagan remained silent as he studied me for a moment longer, his eyes narrowing ever so slightly. The silence stretched on, broken only by the distant clatter of footsteps echoing through the hall, but instead of knocking, they slowly died as they walked on. Finally, he nodded. Very well. With that, he pulled out a letter, filled it out before me, stamped it with a wax seal, and gave it to me. This will prove that you are clear as a hot summer day. When and where? Tomorrow, just before dusk, a day's travel outside the city. The crows will be moving the artifact to a hiding place, and they'll have only a handful of people guarding it. All of those who know about it. Another carefully planted lie, we weren't planting it. We were going to get it. We will be there, Laszlo said, his smirk widening. He adjusted the dagger at his belt, its hilt gleaming in the light. This should be fun. I gave them both a sharp nod and turned to leave. The sound of my boots against the floor echoed in the guild, making me nervous, but nobody stopped me. Neither of them suspected anything, it seems. They saw me as a useful tool, nothing more. And that was their mistake. Step 1, complete. Step 2, Risa. I returned to the crow's hideout just before midnight. The moon was out, more prominent than anything, taking up much of the night sky. I hope it is a sign that things will go my way. I wasn't stopped at all while entering, as not many of us were there anyway. Although surprised I came back so soon when I should have been preparing, when I told them I must speak with Risa, I think they had picked up on the urgency in my voice. Risa was alone in her office, leaning over a stack of documents, her candle flickering low. She was probably looking into how to keep the artifact safe and hidden. Whatever it was, it didn't matter to me. Hearing me enter, she barely glanced up from her work, but the second she saw my face, her expression sharpened. "What is it?" she asked, her voice calm but alert, with a tinge of warning that I should choose my words carefully. "Problem," I said as I took a slow breath, ready to start tonight's second performance. I should get an award for this. Well, my escape with my life intact should be the award in itself. The guild is coming, I stated clearly. They're planning to ambush us when we retrieve the artifact. They think they can take it. I thought you should know. What? Risa's eyes narrowed, her gaze piercing through me as she assessed my expression. Then, surprisingly, she let out a low laugh. Ha! I was wondering when those bastards would finally make their move. I was afraid they already knew because of you. So, you're telling me this because I'm not an idiot, I said bluntly, meeting her gaze without flinching. I know if they take us by surprise, we're dead. I'd rather stay on the winning side. Good. She leaned back in her chair, the wood creaking, its aged frame moaning loudly. Her fingers drummed lightly on the armrest, a habit she had when she was thinking, and I wasn't about to interrupt her. I wasn't expecting you to be so honest, Auriel. If you hadn't come to me with this— Her smile was small but dangerous. It would have been deadly. I guess they knew I visited the guild, huh? I expected as much. I wonder if they would have come for me if I hadn't come straight here but gone somewhere else. I know. I met her gaze evenly. That's why I came. I like you, she said after another pause. Then with a slow exhale, she nodded. We'll be ready. You should be too. I gave her one last look before turning to leave. Yes. She believed me. And why wouldn't she? For now, things have been going smoothly, but I can't get complacent. The dangerous part is still waiting for me. Step 2, complete. Step 3, the escape, the part that I either screwed up and died, or pulled off and lived. Fuck. Why do I feel so excited? Is this how it feels to actually live? I never knew this feeling, but I didn't want to become an adrenaline junkie either. I walked out of the office and into the night air, inhaling deeply and calming my nerves. The cool breeze carried the faint scent of drizzle, a storm brewing on the horizon, clouds covering half of the massive moon in the sky. I had set everything in motion, and there was no stepping back from here. Only forward. The guild would come, the crows would be waiting, blood would spill, and lives would be lost. And in the chaos I would slip away. Finally, I wasn't a pawn anymore. No one will decide my fate besides me. Not the guild, not the crows. If something happens, I will be in control, and I will make the decisions from now on. After I managed to leave and head to wherever the road took me, I knew I would not join anybody. I will only trust my own decisions, which means I will have to make my own group. If I make one, maybe I will forge my own syndicate. Or my own guild. Stop it, I told myself, holding back my rampant imagination. First, I had to survive. But if I had to bend reality itself to my will to do so, then so be it. Chapter 23, Escape. Risa wasted no time after my warning. The moment I informed her about the guild's plan and who would most likely attend, the gears within the crows began turning at full speed, sweeping me up quickly. Orders were sent out, potions and weapons distributed, and I even got a complete set of new padded armor, a new sword, and a bandolier with multiple potions. Nothing was spared. And the others, especially Kravik in his half-plate armor, looked way more dangerous than we went for the beast folks' camp. After leaving while it was still dark, the air cold and humid, dark clouds rumbling, but without starting to pour water on us. Somehow, even after knowing that this was way too dangerous, I didn't feel the type of fear I was expecting. It was there, yes, but I was also excited. Equally so. It was a scary thought if I lingered on the feeling. Was I always like this in the past? Only I was unable to act on it. Who knows? Chasing the thought away, I moved among them, pretending to be just another fighter, another piece in Risa's grand game, ready for the grand finale. Even though my final preparations were different, I was hoping that there would be a perfect chance to disappear amidst the chaos, preferably in a way that would make them think I died. And for that, I was delighted the ambush would happen close to a river. It was my best chance. Relax. Kravik chuckled, probably noticing my nervousness, mistaking the reason for it. You are a lucky one, kid. I have a good feeling about you. Thanks. I smiled weakly. Take care of yourself, okay? I looked at him, watching him nod with a grin. I wasn't afraid that he would die, but I would feel bad if he died because of Risa. I just didn't trust her. Since the news of the artifact, her aura had been foul. Getting to the chosen scene, the 24 crows and I, who were selected for the ambush, took our spot, hiding after Risa made sure we had all of the required potions. Strength, speed, endurance, the 3 different ones we were supposed to drink right before engaging. I was told that each bottle on my bandolier was packing enough magical enhancement to allow me to tear a regular person apart when combining them. Holy hell, this also meant that the 2 from the guild were probably packing something similar, weren't they? I need to keep reminding myself in the future that I wasn't going up against regular people. Potions in this world are really the table-flipping solutions. Risa stood at the head of the gathered fighters, her presence hidden, crouching on a thick branch of a massive tree, hidden amongst the leaves. When she spoke, her voice was akin to a whisper next to my ears. We wait. Don't move, not until we attack. They are dangerous, so we hit them hard. No hesitation, no holding back. They die, or we do. A low, guttural chorus of agreement rippled through the air like a beast's growl. I nodded along, keeping my breathing steady, my face slightly pale and my hand trembling. Inside, though, my mind suddenly flashed back to something that didn't belong to me. Calm down, Auriel. Overexcited adventurers get to die first. An old voice told me from nowhere, pushing me into a trance-like state. You have the talent, but if you let your rampant emotions overtake you, making you hesitate or jump into action before thinking, you will die. To the most simple bandits, this land can throw at you. Never forget my words, kid. Calm, remain calm. In every situation, Reagan didn't trust many people, not if it was about an elven artifact. That's why, when it came to securing the prize of his life, he told no one. Not the other adventurers, not even his inner circle. Not the brass at other headquarters, only Laszlo. That way, they wouldn't need to share it with anyone, and the guild wouldn't get their grubby hands on it. The 2 of them rode out of the city under the cover of darkness, slipping out unnoticed. Their destination, the supposed location where the crows were transporting it. The moon was hidden away behind dark clouds, only the occasional lightning strike casting elongated shadows across the forested landscape. The only sounds were the rhythmic crunch of hooves against dirt and the occasional rustle of wind through the trees as they rode their horses. I assume you're looking forward to this, Reagan murmured, as he rode beside Laszlo, his voice barely audible over the night stillness. A bit, Laszlo smirked, his teeth glinting in a sudden flash of blue light. A bunch of street rats, thinking they can challenge us. It'll be good exercise. It was a long time since I had a proper fight. Same. The guildmaster chuckled, his expression unreadable beneath the brim of his hat. Still, we should be cautious. The crows are still a well-organized gang, even if they are a gang. Risa's father was still a gold-ranked adventurer. I heard. Too bad the old man died before I would have a chance to test his skills. Laszlo flexed his fingers, the leather of his gloves creaking softly. I know they are dangerous. That's why we kill them before they even know they're dead. Smiling, it was clear that the 2 men's confidence was unshaken. However, it wouldn't hold long because they had no idea what was waiting for them. I watched from my hiding spot as the 2 men arrived here to set an ambush for us. Reagan and Laszlo dismounted and moved through the pitch-black night, coming towards the spot that would be perfect for an ambush, not knowing we were already there. While moving through the forest, they were fast and efficient, setting themselves up in prime ambush positions that would hide them well, almost making me smile because they were painfully visible from where we stood. My smile disappeared when Reagan's eyes scanned the shadows, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword, making me think he already noticed us. Or me. Luckily, his gaze didn't stop on my body, glancing at Laszlo, who also crouched low, his dagger already in hand and his body coiled like a spring. Then they heard it, the shuffle of feet in the darkness. One of us was making the first move. Reagan's eyes narrowed, his ears picking up the noise. Wait. Too late. From the shadows, the first few crows descended like specters of a midnight haunting. Their movements were unnaturally fast, their eyes glowing faintly from the potions coursing through their veins. Their blades flashed, and some crossbow bolts flew out from a different location. The first wave hit them hard, prompting me to drink my own potions. It was no time to think about keeping them for the future. I witnessed as Regan twisted away from the first strike like he had no spine, a dagger slicing his coat instead of his throat. Laszlo was already moving, his own blade deflecting a fatal blow aimed at his ribs. The two gold-ranked adventurers moved with masterful precision, their instincts honed by years of survival, and even without potions, they managed to deflect the first wave. Ch! They knew, Regan hissed, his posture shifting, his aura of calm replaced with deadly focus. I'll kill the boy too. Laszlo snorted as the two stood in the way. They blocked attacks against their backside, proving they knew how to work together. They knew it well. Still, we had the element of surprise, but Regan and Laszlo were gold-ranked for a reason. Their movements were lethal. The precision of every move their bodies made was unreal, and I watched as they dodged, deflected with one hand, and then drank their own potions with the other. Right after it, they counterattacked with terrifying speed, cutting through the first attackers as if they were nothing, slicing bodies apart with ease. Another crow lunged at them. Laszlo, on the other hand, simply sidestepped, severed his hamstring, and kicked him into another fight, coming straight at him from his left side. Then, another came from behind, just so that Regan ducked low and drove a dagger into his heart before pushing the body aside like discarded meat, defending Laszlo's blind spot. The first bodies hit the ground in a span of seconds of our supposed surprise attack. But we weren't done. We knew that we outnumbered them. Once again, I saw how Regan parried a strike, but this time, because Laszlo was dealing with two others, he was unable to be there for him. With an audible moan, Regan took a knife across the shoulder. Just then, an arrow, coming from Risa's position, grazed Laszlo's cheek because he still managed to tilt his head at the last moment. With a roar belonging to Kravik, it was time that I also joined in the attack. And then the real massacre began. Laszlo and Regan both downed their second potions, and suddenly the fight shifted. We were now facing two unstoppable monsters. Laszlo moved like a blur, his dagger looking like he held four at once as he tore through the nearest of his enemies, carving deep into flesh, slicing tendons and arteries with surgical precision. Somehow, he found the tiniest gaps between the joints of the armors. It was almost unfair. One of the crows screamed as his arm was severed completely. Another collapsed with a hole in his throat, blood spilling onto the dirt, making me see, hear, and smell everything in, well, high definition. Regan wasn't any less brutal. With a powerful backswing, he crushed a skull, his movements like a bulldozer, crashing through the battlefield. A crow to my left stumbled away, his gut spilling onto the ground, and another to my right fell with his head twisted unnaturally backward, before I managed to somehow dodge the guildmaster's crazed attack. The thing that saved my hide was the fact that Kravik rammed into him from the left, finally making him stumble out of his deadly rhythm. For a moment, it still seemed like Regan and Laszlo would turn the tide entirely by themselves. But the rest of our group kept coming. Injuries began piling up, especially as Risa's arrows were precise, finally hitting them either in the arm or the leg. Even if they shrugged it off, their speed did diminish, enough for the others to start defending or dodging them. Defense became their only option. As the battle raged, I stayed close to the edge, feinting a few attacks before backing out, waiting, watching. I needed the perfect moment. Then that moment finally came, but not in the way I had expected. Realizing they were losing ground, Laszlo suddenly shifted tactics. With a flick of his wrist, he revealed a hidden repeater crossbow mounted to his forearm. His target, Risa, right on the tree, a few steps behind me. The bolt shot toward her in the blink of an eye. She dodged, but not everyone did, especially because Laszlo's weapon sent 7 bolts forth in a wide arc, predicting where Risa may choose to dodge, hoping to get her. I saw the bolts fly, heard them whoosh by, and pain exploded in my chest. It was a burning, piercing agony near my collarbone. I immediately knew I had been hit, but it was time to act. I staggered back, groaning, leaving a bloody trail. Then the world tilted as my body fell backward. Into the river. The cold swallowed me whole, but at that moment I didn't mind. The bolt in my body was making me burn up, and it helped alleviate it. I could hear the muffled roars of battle above the surface, but not for long, as it carried me away quickly. My limbs went numb as the current dragged me away, blood leaking from my wound, mingling with the dark water. Not good. I hadn't planned for the pain. I was actually hurt. And the river was carrying me somewhere unknown. I had to remain conscious. I don't know how far I got, but using the last vestige of the potions coursing in my body, I forced myself to somehow, almost in a daze, get myself onto the shore. Just at the right time, because when I was out, their effects were gone, and I simply lay there, injured, tired, but at least living. Next time, I coughed up water, doing my best to keep myself awake. I need a better plan. No improvisation. Chapter 24. New Goals. I woke to the taste of iron in my mouth and the sluggish weight of my limbs, refusing to obey me. The world swayed, bobbing up and down, my vision flickering between the blurred trees and the dark smear of the river stretching behind my back. I didn't remember washing up on the bank at all. Maybe I was doing it out of reflex. What I could recall was the cold currents carrying me forward, throwing me around. As I began to regain more of my mind, the sound of the distant hooting of owls came to me. Hopefully, it was really the sound of an owl and not that of wolves. When I tried breathing in instead, it prompted me to cough and throw up a good amount of water before I managed to draw in some air. My fingers twitched. I wanted to fall back to sleep, but I couldn't. It would be tantamount to suicide. Then came the pain. The bolt still jutted in my body, reminding me of the close call and keeping my consciousness at bay. Well, for now. Every breath burned my lungs as if they were filled with shards of glass. This was probably bad. I wasn't even feeling cold, which further worried me because this wasn't a pleasant swim. Got to move. I grunted, groaningly compelling my mind to obey. With great effort, I forced myself up, one trembling hand gripping the damp soil beneath me, sinking into the mud. Then, ignoring the jolting pain in my torso, I kept pushing, standing up in the end. I looked around and my sword was lost in the river's depths. Damn it. It was new, I wanted to keep. Ah. It seemed like some luck was on my side because I had spotted it close to the shore. I don't know how or why, but I didn't ask. I simply grabbed it and began walking. We had our plan. With a grunt of effort, I staggered forward, each step a battle against the weakness trying to pull me down. It didn't help that the forest around me seemed to close in within the darkness, the trees towering around me like giants. South ... I muttered, pulling out one small compass the size of a pocket watch and following Lyra's directions. She did tell me that all roads were conveyed into one big one, as there was only one pass through the southern border. No matter where I was going, as long as I was going south, I would have to end up at the Sleepy Squirrel Inn. So without thinking, I just kept walking, following the compass. If he could reach the tavern, if Lyra was still waiting for me, then it would all be worth it. After what felt like a long time, I managed to stumble onto a road-like path, wide enough to be used by horse carriages. That was a good sign. Still being dark, there was nobody traveling alongside it. By now I didn't care. My body and mind were moving on autopilot, a bolt still lodged into my shoulder. Hours bled away into pain and exhaustion, but no matter how much my senses cried to rest, I did not stop. Not until I saw the slanted roof of a roadside inn in the distance. Was this it? I didn't know, but the moment my body saw it, it simply took at the ultimate goal of mine. I don't even know if I noticed its name or if there was light in its windows. By then, I didn't even care if Lyra was there. I just wanted to lay down and rest, for a long time. Lyra was nervously staying at the inn, hoping that all would go as planned. However rickety that planning was, she felt helpless because she knew it had too many points that could lead to failure. Still, she hadn't got any better idea. Maybe I should have waited closer to him. She thought Auriel might not even find his way to her. The thought made her squeezy and fidgety, which was quickly noticed by the kind old pair running the Sleepy Squirrel. Of course, they asked what the matter was, because a young maiden, arriving alone and looking so flustered, was already alarming enough. She couldn't tell them much just by virtue, so she made up half-lies. She told them that her parents abandoned them and that she was separated from her only relative, her brother. She told them that they had spoken about how, if that ever happened, they would meet here. But the door to the inn suddenly pushed open and Lyra spotted him before he could call out, her eyes widening in horror as she rushed to him. Auriel! Her hands were on him before he could protest. They were warm and shaking, trying to steady him as his knees finally buckled, collapsing onto her. The bolt, which was quickly noticeable in his shoulder, shifted and he let out a sharp, choked gasp. That is lodged in deep. The old man, twice the size of Auriel, hurried over, throwing his towel over his shoulders, which he used to wipe the mugs, and quickly took Auriel from Lyra. His touch was firm but gentle, so as not to hurt Auriel more, being careful not to worsen the unseen wounds, which were, for now, maybe unseen. Gods, Lyra cursed, her voice tight with worry, you're burning up. What the hell happened? Auriel tried to answer, but the words caught in his throat, which was too dry and cracked to answer. Being held and feeling himself safe, the world tilted violently, black creeping in at the edges of his sight, finally blacking out. Inside, another voice said, a bit more high-pitched. She was the innkeeper's wife, awoken by the noise, and noticed the scene the moment she appeared from their private adobe. Get him to one of the rooms now. The next few hours were lost in a haze for Lyra as she followed them, white as the snow from worry. She could only watch as the innkeeper's hands pulled at Auriel's armor, revealing the injury, luckily the only injury he suffered. Lyra couldn't hear what the two were talking about, her mind drawing sudden blanks, only registering their voices as muttered gibberish, spoken in urgency, which was not good. Then she watched as they broke off the bolt, and then, carefully opening the wound up, removed the arrowhead lodged into Auriel's body. He looked weak. What if she loses him? What would she do? Lyra couldn't help herself. She couldn't stop thinking about it. She was useless. Wasn't she? Watching the two hurry around him, visibly proficient in handling such injuries, she suddenly realized she had to step up. Had to learn. She had to earn her place at Auriel's side, otherwise, there may be no sides to stand on, and she would be abandoned. No, she muttered to herself, she won't be discarded because she would make herself valuable and not a hindrance. First, starting from that point, she would learn how to take care of injuries and how to take care of him. When I woke up again, I was in a bed, a familiar warmth pressing against him instead of cold. No, it wasn't someone else. It was sunlight. At first, I thought I woke from a nightmare, but no. This wasn't my old apartment. This was a different type of room. Well, at least I live. It seems… Ugh. I flinched as I began moving, checking out myself. I was still injured, all right, and this kind of pain was reminding me of the fact that I wasn't dead yet. Looking down, tight and precise bandages were wrapped around my torso, and the sharp edge of the pain I felt had slowly dulled to a distant ache. Something was in those bandages that was making it bearable. I could tell because the room smelled of herbs. I don't know what kind of medicine, mixed with the faint tang of burnt firewood. Licking my lips, I realized that it and my throat were dry, my body impossibly heavy but not cold, nor burning up. Which was a good sign, a superb sign. Success, I muttered, eliciting a soft moan and muttering from my right, making me turn my head towards the sound. Lyra was sitting beside the bed, her arms crossed, dark circles beneath her closed eyes. Her hair was tied back in a loose braid, a few strands escaping to frame her face. She stirred as I made more noises, and then her eyes slowly opened, and she looked as though she hadn't slept in days. You're an idiot. A reckless idiot. No arguments there. I let out a weak, breathy chuckle. You sound relieved, though. I am, but I'm also furious, but not with you. Then, I asked, surprised, but she ignored my question. What matters is that you are safe. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. She climbed onto my bed, checked my temperature, and gently stroked my head. It felt nice. Really nice. For a moment I closed my eyes, enjoying the feeling before opening them again and hearing her question. What happened in the end? Chaos, I murmured, my voice barely above a rasp. The plan worked. Kinda. They never saw it coming. I mean, both sides. When the moment came, I slipped away in the fighting. I swallowed, my throat as dry as sandpaper. Before I could say more, she helped me sit up and gently held up a bottle, assisting me all the way to take a few sips. I don't know who made it out in the and I don't care. I continued, with how they got me, they will think I'm dead. We are free to leave. Hopefully. She studied me for a long moment, her gaze still worried, searching my face for reassurance that I was indeed feeling fine. You will need rest. From all the money you gave me, I barely spent any. Oh yeah, money. It wasn't much anyway, but I did take a risk, sending her out with everything I had gathered in the few months since coming here. It seems my gamble paid out. She didn't run away and kept waiting for me, keeping my stuff safe. By now I was sure. She I can trust. We will now, I muttered, flinching. I don't remember much, but we will need to pay for the two who helped us, for fixing me up. We do. She smiled and continued stroking my head. Then a comfortable silence stretched between us. Then suddenly, Lyra sighed, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of the world had settled on them from nowhere. So, what now? I had no answer just yet. Instead, I stared at the ceiling. I had no actual plans yet. I barely knew the world at all, but that didn't mean I couldn't have any. First, recovery, I said half-jokingly, then travel, preferably to a different country. That may not be easy, she muttered, but then again, we will get there when we get there. No use in worrying ahead of time. If we want to survive, I said slowly, each word chosen before I spoke them, we can't keep running. No, we can't, Lyra agreed as she raised an eyebrow, her lips quirking in a faint, curious smile. What are you suggesting? We start our group? Huh? She blinked her eyes, then laughed, shaking her head. The sound was soft, almost disbelieving. We? And from what? We are poor and I have no skills, Auriel. Nobody would take you seriously with me around. I'm just a baker. So what? I fidgeted, pushing myself to sit straight while I also managed a smirk despite the pain. It's better than being someone else's pawn. What do you say? You and me, starting our fresh? Sounds fun. I wasn't lying to her. It did sound fun, and for some reason, I was feeling myself more and more motivated. Yeah, that will do nicely. My own little enterprise with my rules. Chapter 25, Heading South. Even after being cared for the next few days, I drifted in and out of consciousness, my body refusing to obey me at first, making me stuck in bed, slowly recovering. Maybe because it felt as if the world around me was warm and safe, unreasonably so, and I couldn't really tell why. It just did, and it made me start thinking about whether it was the effect of something. An artifact? A spell? Although I didn't see any sign of mages existing yet, I couldn't throw the idea away. Something was different here. Yet as much as my instincts told me to stay alert, my body demanded to drop it and enjoy its rest. When I finally managed to pry my eyes open one morning, I found myself eerily refreshed. I mean, all the pain was gone, and I felt like I was back to normal. Even when I moved, my bones didn't hurt, my muscles reacted as they should, and my mind was out of its groggy state. All in all, I knew I was healed, and just like that, the feeling of wanting to rest was gone too, my body prompting me to get back up and start walking. "You're awake then," came a gruff but amused voice from the doorway, making me flinch for a moment. After I turned my head, I watched as an old man leaned against the doorframe, a small smile visible behind his short, silvery beard. He was broad-shouldered and tall, but more than that, he had a presence that was commanding. Even despite his weathered age, I somehow felt as if he could mop the floor with me if he wanted. Weird, but I trusted my instincts. His white beard and hair were well kept, contrasted by the deep lines on his face, telling a different story than what should fit an innkeeper. There was a deep scar cut across his left cheek, and somehow I didn't think it was from a bar fight or a misjudged swing of a bread knife. No need. Before I could finish, the old man cut me off as he stepped inside, carrying a wooden tray with a steaming bowl of stew and a cup of what smelled like spiced tea. Reckon you should eat before you start asking questions. Thanks, I muttered, finishing my original sentence and sitting up. The moment he put the tray in my lap, I realized how hungry I was, beginning to wolf the whole meal down without holding anything back. The old man clicked his tongue, watching me eat without reservation. Easy there, lad. Nobody will take it away. He laughed before his eyes moved to the scar I will now have, reminding me of the close call I just had. That bolt was buried deep, would have lost that arm if you'd wandered the forest much longer. You were lucky. I am lucky. I exhaled, knowing the man was right and that it was my second go at life. I was indeed one lucky bastard, weren't I? Lyra. She is helping my wife with the sleepy squirrel, the old man replied, sitting down on a chair next to my bed, pulling out a pipe from his vest's inner pocket and lighting it up. Name's Garen, by the way. My wife Mirror is the one who patched you up. Mostly, so next time, thank her. Just as if summoned, the old woman entered the room carrying fresh linens in her hand. Her presence was much softer than Garen's, but there was something in her gaze I couldn't really read. It was a type of quiet strength, a hidden sharpness that could only originate from experience. As for what kind of experience, probably a killer one. Her similarly grey hair was streaked with some black, holding on to her lost youth, pulled back into a practical braid. Moving my eyes, though her hands looked delicate, I could tell they had the type of calluses that showed she wasn't used to delicate work. That is for sure. You were half dead when you stumbled in, Mirror said without allowing me to speak up, setting the linens down. Poor little Lyra nearly had a heart attack. Thank you. I let out a breathless chuckle, shaking my head. She worries too much. She worries exactly the right amount, she corrected me with a snap, giving me a pointed look. I take it this isn't the first time you've come close to dying. I hesitated, choosing to be honest. I had the feeling they would know if I tried to lie. Not exactly. Kids. Garen chuckled, handing me the tea, seeing that I was finished with my meal. Then you're either very unlucky or very stubborn. Bit of both, I admitted, taking a careful sip, feeling how hot the cup was. The warmth spread through my body instantly, easing the remaining tightness in my muscles. Damn, this was more than good. This was superb. I wondered, how much will this cost me? Over the next few days, I found myself recovering faster than I expected. I mean, my body was fine already, but I found some issues with my thoughts and my mind. I felt a bit harder to keep up with my recovered fitness, knocking things over and dropping utensils without wanting to. Garen said I simply needed some time to adjust and regain my reflexes, telling me that my mind still thought I should be injured, yet my body was healed, causing a mismatch between my perception and reality. This indeed seemed to be the case as I began improving as the days went by. It also made me think, that was thanks to our caretakers. I mean, there was something more than just patching me up. Mira's cooking was more than just food. Honestly, it felt infused with something more, something that helped my mind recover just as fast as my body did. I wasn't foolish enough to think it was pure magic, but there was an unmistakable quality to the way she and Garen prepared our meals. Could this be related to potions? A type of alchemy? I was getting sure of it, but I wouldn't be rude enough to ask it. But I was crude enough to suggest to Lyra to keep an eye out and try to see if there is more to it. Maybe she can pick something up while shadowing Mirror in the kitchen. Doing the same thing, I started spending my time downstairs in the common area, watching as Garen served drinks and swapped stories with travelers, while Mirror prepared meals with practiced efficiency. Of course, I wasn't just sitting around, I was helping out with everything. From cutting firewood, exercising my muscles, feeling no pain at all, or just cleaning up the inn before night. Every time we returned to our rooms, Lyra always stayed close, constantly watching me with a mixture of relief and exasperation, even if I told her that I was fine. Then, one evening, I couldn't hold the question down. Excuse my bluntness. I spoke up as I nursed a drink by the fire, there being only the four of us there. Maybe it was the slightly alcoholic drink that loosened my tongue. You two aren't just innkeepers, are you? Garen raised an eyebrow while Mirror merely smiled knowingly. What makes you say that, kid? Well, I gestured at them vaguely. The way you move. The way you talk. The way Mirror treats wounds like she's done it 100 times before, and the way you both handle knives in the kitchen, or the quality of the food you make, or the drinks, or both of your auras, everything. Took you longer than I expected. I mean, asking the question, that is. Garen let out a hearty laugh, flipping a gold coin over to his wife, making me twitch an eye. Did they bet on me? Seems like it. Sharp eyes, lad. I told you a good drink would prompt it out of him, Mirror smirked, setting down a plate of roasted meat and bread in front of her husband. We've been around, yeah, but that's all you need to know. I see. I didn't press. If they wanted to keep their past a mystery, I wouldn't push them. I am curious but not stupid. So instead I shifted the conversation to something else, wanting to use their experience to our advantage. We'll be heading south soon. What should we expect? Heading out? True, you are more than good to back into the fray that adventuring is. The south, huh? At that, Garen's expression grew more serious. South of here, you're heading into the Federation of Free Cities. Federation? I frowned, glancing at Lyra, but she just shook her head. I already knew that she wasn't sure of the overall politics of the land, only living within the one city she had ever known, and some of its surroundings. But that was all. I've heard the name before, but not much beyond that, I muttered, hoping that my white lie wouldn't be taken as an offense. It is different. Mirror sat down across from us, looking at me. The Federation isn't like the kingdoms around us. It's made up of 7 city-states, each one ruling itself, though they have a loose alliance when it benefits them, usually against external dangers. Their laws change from city to city, and the only real rule that applies to all of them is that money and power talk. So it's lawless? Lyra asked from beside me, her arms crossed, tapping nervously with her fingers. Not lawless, Garen corrected, swallowing a big bite. Just selective. If you've got coin or influence, you'll find protection. If you don't, justice can be hard to come by. Doesn't sound that much different. Only more open about it, I muttered as I absorbed the information. And the cities themselves. They have everything. Mirror nodded. Also, they aren't all human-dominated like the northern kingdoms. The Federation is diverse. Humans, dwarves, beast folk, and even some rebellious orcs and goblins have their own places among them. Some cities are known for their mercantile wealth, others for their mercenary guilds. But make no mistake, while there's opportunity, there's also danger. You'll want to keep your wits about you. Everything can be legal there, with the proper backing. I see. I muttered as I leaned back in my chair, considering their words. Sounds like our kind of place. Maybe. Mirror sighed. That's what I'm afraid of. Kids like you can be reckless. Kid. As Lyra and I prepared to leave, Garen handed me a small, intricately carved wooden token. If you find yourself in Silverhaven, look for a man named Kyle. He's an old friend. Show him this and he'll help you. Silverhaven? I asked as I turned the token over in my hands, noting the symbol of a coiled serpent etched into the wood. What's this for? You'll see. Garen chuckled. You may not need it, but it is better to have it than not when it is needed. Thank you. But why? I asked, thinking about it for a while. Why are they helping us? I even asked what the price was for all they did for us, but they said there was none. Just. Mirren smiled at both of us. We are old. It is all that is left for us to do for the new generation. That's all. Stay safe, kids, okay? If you want to pay back anything, don't waste the life we saved. That is all. Really. After that, there was nothing much to say. I thanked them once again before heading out. As we trotted towards the south, Lyra broke the silence first. What are we really looking for after we cross the border, Auriel? I don't know yet, I answered honestly. We will find a place and then go from there, see what opportunities we can grab and, well, start building a new life. A new life does sound good. She smiled and nervously reached out, holding my hand. Chapter 26. The Federation of Free Cities. The road southward stretched longer than I expected, taking us more than a week's worth of travel as Lyra and I made our way toward the border. Leaving the mostly forested areas behind us, the landscape had gradually shifted, the dense foliage and trees giving way to more grassy, rolling hills and sparse groves of cypress trees. The scent of the world had also changed, something that I noticed with how clear the air was here. The earthy smell that was previously tinged with pine and fresh grass was gradually replaced by a different one. It had the faint aroma of something more warmer. It is hard to put it into words, but it was different. The air simply felt warmer and drier, giving me less of the sense that winter would be upon us at any time. Arriving at our first goal, the Federation of Free Cities border station stood at the crest of a shallow hill in the form of a sturdy checkpoint of stone and wood. I noticed multiple crossing points, all of them reinforced with iron gates and guards standing at attention. Scanning the fields, soldiers patrolled the area, clad in a mix of steel and leather armor, bearing the crest of the Federation, deciding on who they were letting into their country. I noticed a banner above the crossing point with a 7-pointed star, each tip probably representing one of the city-states within this loose alliance. Traders, travelers, and adventurers alike lined up in multiple queues, each awaiting their turn to be inspected so as not to stick out from the crowd. We did so too, waiting patiently. Standing there, I was listening to the others, noticing that the language was still the same, not even accented, relieving me a little. I was afraid that different countries would speak different languages, but so far that hasn't seemed to be the case. Auriel. Lyra tensed beside me, her hands curling into the folds of her cloak, leaning close to whisper. "Are you sure this will work?" she murmured, eyes scanning the guards not that far from us. Her eyes moved around warily, noticing that soon it would be our turn. "You know how border officials are." "No, I heard my parents talk about it." She grimaced, bringing them up, feeling weird to call them that. But she quickly pushed the thoughts away, continuing, "They're as likely to turn us away as let us through or simply take everything we have. Or worse." "It'll be fine," I assured her, though I couldn't completely ignore the small flicker of doubt gnawing at me too. Corruption is everywhere, especially where there is no quick or instant retaliation. Who would be able to prove anything here in a world where there are no cameras or fingerprints? Anyway, I had to remain calm, so I answered with a smile. "Adventurers have free passage between nations. The bracelet and the letter from Reagan should be enough." Saying it, I also adjusted the strap of my pack, getting ready to pull out the payment I asked for in advance. This was also the point where I would test if my plan worked. Let's hope it did, and I wasn't backlisted. To ease her nervousness, she got closer, holding onto my hand, turning her head back and forth, watching us take another step forward. We stood in the lane that only had individuals, without carts or big packs, which was why ours moved slightly faster than the merchant ones, sometimes needing to look over 2 or 3 carriages at once. Leaning to the side to take a better look, the guards here looked accustomed to dealing with armed travelers, probably mercenaries or other adventurers. Looking at their gazes, they were sharp but less suspicious if they saw weapons hanging from people's waists. One of them, a woman with a thick braid of auburn hair and a chainmail vest, suddenly gestured me forward. It seems it was time. While walking up, I looked at her eyes, which were a piercing green, and noticed that a scar ran from her temple to her jawline, marking her as someone who wasn't afraid to look death in the eye. "Name and rank?" she asked, her tone bored but polite enough not to be offensive. "Auriel, bronze rank adventurer." I raised my wrist, showing the simple yet unmistakable adventurer's bracelet I put on before coming here. The sigil of the Adventurers Guild was etched into the metal along with my details, marking me as an official member. I just hoped if they checked it, I would still show up as an official member. "I see." The guard took my wrist, inspecting it for signs of presumably tampering or something, then gave a nod at me, letting my hand go. "Any papers of identity?" "Papers?" I muttered, trying to remember, but the original Auriel had nothing like that, I think. So instead of that, I pulled out the parchment bearing the seal and the insignia of Reagan, the probably already dead guildmaster. Although I can't be sure he went down. Whatever. If I get through, that should be it. Keeping my nerves under control, I watched as the woman scanned the document quickly, her eyes flicking over the details of my papers. Her expression remained neutral, but I noticed the slight tightening of her lips when she reached the bottom of the page. "Well?" I asked, but she just looked at me once before folding it up and handing it back to me. "Everything checks out. And her?" The guard nodded toward Lyra. "She's with me," I replied simply, holding her hand. "The guild knows she's my companion." "Sure." The guard studied Lyra briefly, her gaze lingering on her face, studying her features and her hand, before smirking a little, probably thinking something improper. I think Lyra also felt the same way as she blushed, trying to look away. But then the guard's voice prevented it from happening. "Not an adventurer yourself, huh?" "No, I am just a baker. Or was." Lyra shook her head, but didn't offer more explanation. I listened as the guard exhaled through her nose, then shrugged, probably deeming us as runaway lovebirds. Or as stupid teens. Works for me if that's the case. "Fine. Just know that the Federation isn't like the northern holds that you are used to. The law is looser here. Adventurers are somewhat in their own group, but don't cause trouble, or not even the guild can protect your asses. The city-states have their own rules, and the guild's influence only goes so far as their willingness to reach into their pockets for their members. It is too easy to lose your freedom in a card game, or your wife to a gang you crossed." Lyra flinched, but I just shrugged as if knowing what she meant. But in reality, I was taken aback. Fucking hell, this is wild. Still, after getting the green light, I dipped my head in thanks as she waved us through. As we stepped past the iron gates, a subtle shift filled the air. It was probably just my imagination, something that my mind concocted, because we really left everything behind, entering a new world. Kinda. Ahead of us, as far as we knew, there lay one of the 7 cities, Velgrada. It was our current target, hopefully, a place where we could find our footing and start building. As for what? I think a personal organization sounds nice. Something that can bring in money and allow me to kick back later on and just enjoy a new life. It took us 2 days to get to the city. As we descended from the hills, Velgrada came into view, painting a beautiful picture, something out of a movie. Unlike the rigid, more grey-coloured stone cities of what I had seen so far, this one was a vibrant sprawl of warm, ochre-coloured buildings with red-tiled roofs and tall arched windows. The only similarity was the twisting alleyways paved with cobblestones. But not everywhere. I noticed as grand plazas opened at intersections where fountains sculpted in marble spewed crystal-clear water into wide basins. From our vantage point, we saw how the local markets bustled with life, their stalls, their canopies bright with dyed cloth. After entering the city, I could see that they were offering goods ranging from silks to spices, next to exotic fruits and intricate-looking clockwork devices. The city seemed to be filled with a specific energy, being much more alive than, well, anything I saw so far in both of my lives. The first impression was great, really. And I think Lyra was relieved too, because she was like a child, amazed by the colors and smell, walking with me, exploring the city. In our first hour, we walked over a bridge built across a river that cut through the heart of the city. It was crossed by elegantly arched bridges at multiple intervals, adorned with statues of heroic-looking figures. It made me think of Mediterranean cities after seeing the gondola-like boats floating along its surface, ferrying people from one district to another. The air was thick with the scent of fresh bread, roasting meat, and the unmistakable sweetness of sugared almonds sold by street vendors. Were we warned for no reason? This city didn't seem that dangerous. It was hard to imagine it when minstrels played soft melodies on the street corners, their music mixing with the din of bartering voices and trotting hooves when horsed people, probably local nobles, passed by us. Of course, the warning was not to scare us. It was a warning. I knew that colorful animals usually meant they were venomous. The same could apply here. The more colorful this city is, the more dangerous it could be under the surface, lulling us into a false sense of security. Whoa! Lyra turned in a slow circle, taking in the sight with wide eyes, bringing me out of my loosening thoughts. "I've never seen anything like this," she admitted, her voice almost breathless. "It's so alive and beautiful." "Yeah, it is," I shared the sentiment. though I masked my wonder behind a more composed expression. It's different, that's for sure. But keep your wits about you. Places like this have a way of swallowing people whole, got it? Yes? She nodded, but then I smiled a little, not wanting to rob her of the happiness she felt, especially after all that had happened. As we made our way deeper into the city, we found ourselves within one of its grand squares. A towering clock tower stood at its center, gilded with golden filigree and inscribed with the same type of numerals I would see in my own world. Are we back to Roman times or something? Chasing the thoughts away, I kept inspecting our surroundings, which were more buildings adorned with frescoes depicting heroes, mythical beasts, and the founding of the Federation itself, as far as I could guess. My first impression was that Velgrada felt like a city that thrived on trade and culture rather than conquest. Its wealth was not built on killing others, but on the movement of goods, ideas, and possibly art. Yet the frescoes also warned me that there were people here who would stab you through the heart if must. "Let's go," I said, pulling on Lyra. "It's best if we find a place to stay for now." We passed through a narrow street lined with artisan shops as we walked, their windows displaying beautifully crafted wares of glasswork, jewelry, and fancy masks that seemed to be part of some local festival tradition. These masks were particularly striking, their expressions ranging from serene to grotesque, even vicious, their colors vivid and unsettling, making the hair stand up on my back. The sight of them for some reason, made me uneasy. The city was breathtaking, but who knows? Maybe the nobles here were the type of decadence that I heard in horror stories. Sure enough, as we walked, a well-dressed man in a velvet tunic strolled past us, twirling a cane, his boots polished to perfection. I could tell from one glance that he strutted along the street as if he owned it. Maybe he did. Just to our left, from a side street, someone was coming out without looking, colliding with the man. What followed the simple incident was that the man began beating the other with his cane without anyone batting an eye, steering clear from the scene. "It's not our place," I murmured, pulling Lyra along. "I interfered with something like this once, ending up with the crows. This time, I simply won't." She exhaled sharply, but said nothing, though her fingers twitched as if itching to reach out, trying to stop the beating. No, that could lead us to die in a ditch. So with increased steps, I kept pulling on her and continued to walk. Eventually we reached an inn at the edge of a bit quieter and less opulent district, its wooden sign creaking as it swayed in the breeze. "The Starlit Roost," I muttered, reading it, watching the engraving of a perched owl beneath it. The building was smaller than the others, but still well kept, with flower boxes on its windows and a warm glow spilling out to the streets from within it. Entering, the first thing that hit me was the scent of roasted lamb and spiced cider, along with the gentle hum of chatter of the local patrons. The innkeeper was a middle-aged woman with salt-and-pepper-colored hair who glanced up from behind the counter, offering a nod. "2 rooms?" she asked, getting to the business side of things from the get-go. "1," I answered. "We'll take whatever is available." "Sure, 5 silver a night." She arched a brow but said nothing as she handed us a key with a knowing smile. "2nd floor, last door on the left. If you need a meal, we serve dinner until sundown. Otherwise, you will have to eat somewhere else if you run out of time." "Understood." I smiled, paying for a week in advance that she pocketed at once. She smiled even more now and gave me a signed receipt, showing us the stairway, being much more friendly all of a sudden. As I took them and led Lyra upstairs, I couldn't help but let out a slow breath. The city of Velgrada was dazzling, but something about it made me uneasy. I remembered the masks in the shop windows. I wondered how many of the people here wear them. Well, probably all of them. Chapter 27, Velgrada. The city of Velgrada reminded me of an old Mediterranean town with its terracotta rooftops, bustling marketplaces, and loosely placed spires. It was a city unlike any I had ever seen in both of my lives, and I couldn't help but pause at one of the marketplaces to take it all in. It would be even more beautiful if you ignored all the shady stuff behind the curtain. I watched as sunlight bathed the smooth stone buildings, their fronts adorned with intricate carvings of different animals and vibrant banners that fluttered in the breeze, signaling either a shop or the family owning the place. Walking forward, I continued on the tightly packed houses and narrow streets, passing by shaded alleys while making sure I wouldn't run into another local group of mafioso. Once was enough. For now, I just wanted to settle down and gather my bearings before making a move. Strolling past a bakery, the scent of fresh bread and roasting meat drifted in the air, making Lyra next to me flinch, probably reminded of the life that she now left behind. I couldn't blame her because my thoughts were also drawn back to it, being one of the first memories I made in this world. Still, this city felt much more alive than Corva ever did, something that I only realized after I had finally enough to compare with. Of course, Lyra felt the same way as she stuck close to me as we passed through the crowded streets, her wide eyes darting from merchant stalls to street performers juggling knives. She seemed more overwhelmed than me, probably because I had more experience dealing with a crowded city. My old home had millions living in it. This was nothing in comparison. "It's so big," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the din of hawkers calling out their wares and the clatter of cartwheels on cobblestones as they passed by us, forcing people like me to stand to the side while they passed by. "Yeah," I agreed, my gaze scanning the crowd for any signs of trouble, but so far it seemed nobody was even interested in our presence. Still, I just couldn't help keeping alert. Maybe I was becoming paranoid. "Let's find a place to eat first. Then, I need to visit the guild." Turns out, we overslept. It was already past early morning, so there was no chance to have breakfast at where we were staying. So it took us some time, but we managed to find an affordable-looking restaurant on the quieter side of town, a place called the Copper Hearth. The building was modest, its wooden sign creaking softly in the wind. It was Lyra who spotted it, probably because it had a warm, inviting atmosphere. Suddenly, I felt like I was on vacation, sitting on a terrace, ordering eggs on toast, coffee and some baked goods, eating them in peace. No, not just in peace, but with company. Huh. Maybe this was all I needed. I don't know, but I could get used to it. "I think I can copy this." She spoke up halfway through her portion, making me raise an eyebrow. "You were a good baker after all," I muttered, sipping one of the best coffees I had ever had, and that probably showed on my face because she giggled, looking into my eyes. "I am good indeed," she said proudly. "Maybe one day I can have a shop again." "It is not out of the question." I nodded, but she didn't harpoon on it, knowing we were far away from the chance to buy property here. True. But thinking about it, it could be a start. After finishing our late meal, enjoying the sunlight, and a second serving of coffee, it was time to head towards the Adventurers Guild, which turned out to take an hour to do so. The streets of Velgrada were a literal maze, making us wander and get lost 2 times. However, I don't think I would make the same mistake the next time, as the guild hall was impossible to miss when you knew where to look for it. It stood at the edge of one of the city's market-oriented plazas, which were a dime a dozen. It was an imposing grey stone structure with a peaked roof and a banner bearing the local guild's emblem, a crossed sword and shield, fluttering above the entrance, embroiled in actual gold, giving it a bright shine. Wide stone steps led up to a massive wooden door reinforced with iron bands. When I say massive, I mean it, as they were about 10 meters high, having smaller, actual human-sized cutouts on them, open, letting the noise within spill out to the market square. Stepping inside, the air was much more energetic than in Corvar. I could see adventurers of various ranks gathering in differently sized groups, some drinking and laughing, while others huddling over maps and mission postings or just haggling about fares with local customers wanting to hire them. The walls to the left of the entrance were lined with notice boards covered in hundreds of parchments, listing bounties, escort jobs, and monster extermination requests. At least from the few I caught a glimpse of. Turning my head forward, I saw that a large counter at the back was staffed by clerks handling paperwork and distributing assignments that the others took down from the wall on our left. If anything, this one was much more busy than the one in Corvar, and with more members. There are way many more members. Luckily, nobody really bothered to ask what we were doing here. One glance at my bronze bracelet was enough to tell them I was part of the guild and not a customer. "Come, don't stray far." I nudged Lyra before I approached the desk at the far end, presenting my adventurer's bracelet and deciding to register myself with the guild. The clerk, a tired-looking man with ink-stained fingers, glanced at it before flipping through a thick ledger. Bronze rank, huh? New arrival? Just travelled in, I confirmed, keeping my tone as casual as possible. Figured I'd check in and register, and see if there's any news from Corvar. I came from that way. I know, your clothes are a dead giveaway. His fingers paused briefly over the page before he resumed writing. You both are luck to leave that shithole. Why? Lyra asked, her surprise masking her shock, while I was thinking we indeed need new clothes to blend in better. We just got the news ourselves. Yesterday, in fact, he said, voice lowering slightly, but I caught that the man was a gossip machine. Good. Free information is something I love to get. The guildmaster of the Corvar branch? A fellow named Reagan? Yeah, he was found dead. Really? Even expecting it, hearing the confirmation sent a strange feeling jolt through me. Found dead? Just like that. He nodded, chuckling, probably assassinated. No details, Lyra asked, making me nudge her with my leg a little so as not to go too far. No one's saying anything, the clerk said with a shrug. Word is, he disappeared for a while, then someone found him dead in the middle of nowhere. No witnesses, no suspects, and his bestie was also missing. That man's name I don't know, but the whole thing's a mess. Ouch, that sucks. I bet there is chaos over there, huh? I leaned on the counter, feigning nonchalance. What about the adventurers that were in Corvar around that time? Does anyone stand out? Now that you mention... The man eyed me warily, making Lyra nudge me back, and she was right. Now I was taking it too far. Why the curiosity? Because of my friends I had back home. I offered a small, practiced smile. Just wondering if they are okay. Thought about heading back eventually, but if things are unstable... Oh, you know something? He asked, suddenly his eyes lighting up. Not much. I shrugged, getting to whispering. It was time to make some connections anyway if I was going to stay here. There was a guy there named Laszlo. He was doing something shady, connected to a local underground group. He wanted to rope me in, so... I nodded towards Lyra with a knowing smile. Bailed before that could happen, and we would be in trouble. It just felt wrong. I warned others, but you know how it is. Smart choice. He accepted my reasoning easily enough, nodding approvingly. Corvar's guild is still running, but it's going to be under new management. Can't say if things are stable, but the city hasn't burned down, so that's something. But for sure the branch over there will have a few hard years ahead of them, because the top branch will for sure send people to investigate it. I bet it has something to do with that Laszlo guy, I moaned, shaking my head. The guildmaster was also a good man, I continued, showing the letter from him that the clerk scanned quickly and handing it back. That's valuable information, kid. The clerk smiled at me. You have a good head on your shoulders. I'll take care of your local registration and papers. For both of you. Thanks. I chuckled, knowing he would relay my information to the higher-ups. If Reagan is dead, he can't talk about our private deal, and if Laszlo is missing, he is probably also dead. Risa and the others had clearly won. They wouldn't let one get away. It could have been Laszlo who won, but the crow's complete absence from any reports told me it was Risa who came out on top. Or maybe not. Who knows? With our new stamped and completed identities here, we were now clear, even if the guards came and asked who we were. Thanks again, I forced myself to nod casually, watching as I was registered to the local guild as a new member while Lyra was appointed as my companion and underling on the papers. Seemingly, this was pretty normal. We'll be looking for work then. Sure, the clerk smiled back at us. Come to me after you find something. I'll handle the paperwork. With another nod, we left to stand before the long and crowded left wall for the next 10 to 15 minutes. After browsing the fourth notice board, I picked out a few simple tasks, mostly local work that wouldn't draw too much attention and give us enough money to get by. A few deliveries, some minor beast control in the sewers, and one job escorting a merchant through a less than reputable district. It was nothing flashy, but it was enough to get me moving through the city and maybe meeting the right people while doing so. I needed to learn the lay of the land, figure out who held power in Velgrada, and most importantly, avoid stepping on any toes. At last, for now. The last thing we needed was to draw the attention of the city's established factions right onto us. That sewer job sounds nasty. She frowned, seeing me take it down. That's not safe. No, I agreed, reading it through and confirming the details of the work. But for now, we focus on settling in. And this is one that pays pretty well. Also, by the description, others are also working on it, so I don't think this is unique. I know. Lyra let out a small sigh, her shoulders relaxing slightly. Still, you need to be careful, Auriel. I know, I said, looking out the open door at the front of the guild, gazing at the vibrant city beyond. We'll figure this place out one step at a time. I will. You will stay put. I countered her. You can help with some of the jobs, but not with all of them. But I don't think you are good at fighting, I knocked on her forehead. Neither are you someone who would need to get lost in the city that we know nothing about. Stay put, at least for now. Okay? ... She wanted to say something, but in the end she sighed, lowering her head. I just don't want to be useless. Maybe we can find you a place at one of the bakeries. I patted her head, knowing how she must be feeling. Come, let us ask our new clerk friend. Maybe he has the connections. Chapter 28, Underground. When the day arrived when I descended down to the sewers of Velgrada, I expected it to be not my favorite job. But it was worse than I expected. Yes, I knew by the way the task was worded that it was a typical job for bronze-ranked adventurers, something tedious and dirty, but necessary and easy to gain some combat experience. But the smell, that was what I wasn't prepared for. As for the rats, I mean ratkin, not that bad. These creatures weren't fully sapient, but they were more cunning than simple vermin, often forming territorial nests in the city's underground tunnels. That part I discovered from Isak, the clerk we managed to befriend a little. Thanks to him, I learned that they bred quickly, scavenged aggressively, and occasionally attacked sewer workers, or even ventured topside to snatch food or anything shiny. The city didn't take kindly to that, especially if they found their way into the local banks, so adventurers were regularly sent to the sewers to take care of their population. The entrance to the sewers, at least the one I took, was near one of the quieter canals, a rusted iron grate that groaned loudly as I pried it open, alerting anybody and anything nearby for sure. Not that I had any mind to pay attention to it, as the stench hit me immediately. Fuck, I muttered, covering my face with my scarf. Stagnant water, mold, rot, and something faintly metallic made its way up my nostrils, forcing my stomach to churn. Still, I had no other choice, so I just sighed, adjusting the scarf now wrapped around my nose and mouth before descending into the darkness. Of course, I didn't come unprepared. I had a small cranking lamp, a strange little torch that I could stick on the bandolier I was wearing, leaving my hands free. Heading in, giving it a few cranks, its dim yellow light flickered against the damp stone walls, casting shifting shadows, matching the rhythm of my walk. The deeper I got, sword in hand, the air was getting thick and humid, getting past the scarf and clinging to my skin like a second layer of grime. Geez, I will stink even the day after tomorrow. After about a minute or two of walking, I arrived at a junction, stopping and trying to listen to which direction I should head. And, of course, memorizing my way, leaving a small mark on the stone wall with the tip of my sword. In the end, I followed the path that was going toward the right, as I remembered that the left was heading under the canals. And I wasn't keen on that. While walking, I was constantly looking for signs of the rat folk's movements. Claw marks in the slime, gnawed bones discarded in corners, scattered tufts of greasy fur. Everything that Isak mentioned to keep an eye out for. However, there was something else bothering me than the threat of a rat man appearing and trying to bite my ankles. The deeper I went, the more the walls seemed to close in, the ceiling low enough that I had to stoop occasionally to avoid scraping my head. Or was I simply getting claustrophobic? I didn't know I had an issue like that. Get yourself in order, Auriel, I told myself, shaking my head, continuing my trek without running into anything so far. Which was good and bad at the same time, because without bringing back some cut of tails as proof, I wouldn't get paid. However, as I navigated deeper into the tunnels, something suddenly caught my eye, something unrelated to the job. There was a section of the sewer that should have been abandoned and shouldn't have had signs of recent activity, but it had. Shining my light on the clues, getting a bit closer, the stone floor was cleaner than the surrounding muck, as if someone had deliberately swept it, or the thing that was coming through wiped it off. It had to be something heavy because I noticed that faint boot prints were marking the damp ground, leading toward a recessed alcove hidden behind a crumbling wall. It was as if one, no, two, three people. Yes, three people were pushing something in here. I immediately slowed my steps, keeping my heart rate steady, but my mind was already racing. If someone brought something down here, they weren't exactly law-abiding, were they? Quickly, I extinguished my torch, plunging myself into near-total darkness, and waited a little. I was trying to hear if there was anybody here, hiding after hearing I was coming. There could be. Still, the faint sound of dripping water was the only noise I could pick up on. I should be safe. After a moment of hesitation, I edged closer and peered inside the alcove, right where the clues were pointing. And, well, bingo. Crates. At least 4 of them, but more could be hiding behind the ones I could see. They were all stacked neatly, too dry and intact to have been down here long, maybe not even a day. Their surfaces bore markings, one that I couldn't recognize, but it was an insignia that was pressed into the wood, a symbol of some groups, probably. Smugglers, bandits, or something more official. I will have to check after I return to the surface, so I quickly memorized it. Looking around once more, I turned my little torch back on, checking them briefly. Apparently the crates were sealed tightly, and I was not about to try and force them open to see what was inside. That would give away too much, and I should leave. It was too dangerous to linger for this long here. I had a job to finish, after all. Dealing with the rat folk took time. Not much, but at least it was better than I expected. When I found another, more prominent junction connecting 5 different routes, I decided to set up a trap. I baited them out with chunks of salted meat, hiding in the dark and striking with precision and speed as they emerged from the shadows. They were actually more rat-like than human-like. Hairy, about the size of a well-fed hog, many times standing on their hind legs, their front pair showing the ability to grab things as they squeaked against each other. Of course, when I struck the first few, killing them swiftly, my sword entering their unprotected bodies with ease, the creatures fought back. Their beady eyes glinted in my suddenly blinding torchlight, claws slashing at nothing but the air. I should thank Isak for the tip, telling me they are not used to sudden bright lights, using it to my advantage to dispose of the group before me quickly. Information is king. Well, I stood amongst 5 dead ratkin. That's fine for today. I am not going to risk more. I exhaled, not wanting to risk it. If I get cocky, that would benefit nobody. It was time to collect some rat tails and get out of here. By the time I had reported back to the guild and collected my payment, there was only one thought that kept bothering me. Those darned crates hadn't left my mind, not for a moment. Curiosity gnawed at me since returning to the surface, so later that evening I did what any careful detective would do. I started digging for answers. My first stop was one of the merchant districts closest to the inn where we were staying. Even now, streets here were bustling as the sun dipped below the horizon. Lanterns were already lit on the top of street lamps. Locals were walking around, lighting them and, well, grimacing when they passed by me. Well, shit. I did just get out of the sewers, that's true. Ha. Anyway, ignoring the fact that I was looking not for people, but for merchants as they called out their wares, their voices blending with the clatter of carts and the hum of conversation. I wasn't interested in what they were selling. I wanted to hear their organization's names and see their logos. I wanted to know if the things I found were stolen goods or stuff from smugglers. Luckily for me, it didn't take long to find a trade office bearing the same insignia I had seen on the crates. According to the plaque next to the entrance, the building belonged to Garen and Sons Trading. I couldn't tell if they were a well-established merchant operation or not, but the fact they had a sizable place for themselves told me they had money. No wonder, because apparently, thanks to one of their merchants shouting at a nearby stall, they specialized in the best alchemical goods and rare imports. That alone set off alarm bells in my mind, because this meant potions, and potions were valuable. Now, did they lose a shipment, or was that just the type of goods that were not for sale? Interesting. Spending another hour of casual observation at a nearby tavern filled in the rest of the picture. The tavern of my choice was called the Rusty Anchor, and it was a dimly lit establishment, apparently frequented by the workers maintaining the canals in the city, stinking just the same way I did. Blending in, I sat in a corner, nursing a tankard of ale and keeping my ears open, hoping to hear some news. I also kept an eye on the trading company and tried to count how many people came and went from their building, how busy they looked. It was half an hour later that my ears caught something. A hushed conversation between two gondola drives confirmed what I already suspected. Garen and Sons had been robbed 2 days ago. One of their colleagues was ferrying goods when he had been hit, and a shipment of potions had vanished. There were no arrests and no leads, yet just a frustrating silence from the city guard, who likely had bigger problems to deal with than a simple robbery. Interesting. Still, it could be an inside job. I thought to myself while I leaned back in my seat, considering what to do. Those crates in the sewer weren't abandoned, that is for sure, they were stashed. If the situation was legit, the thieves hadn't moved the goods yet, likely waiting for the heat to die down before transporting them. And that, in turn, meant that Garen and Sons would be very interested in any information regarding their whereabouts if they wanted to get them back. Maybe they even had an angry buyer waiting for it. For the first time, I entertained a thought I hadn't considered before. Information was indeed valuable, possibly more valuable than labor or the potions. And it seems I have a knack for finding information, including the documents that led Risa to an elven artifact. I had a piece of knowledge that others would pay for, and if I handled it correctly, this could be the first step toward getting a good amount of money by literally doing nothing. But I couldn't just march up to Garen and Sons and sell them the location. That would be foolish and probably suicidal. I needed a cover, an approach that wouldn't make me seem like the thief or, worse, put me on the wrong side of the actual gang who stole the goods. Plus, if the bandits realized someone had uncovered their hiding spot, they'd move the stash. Then they would try to eliminate the loose end. Me. Tisk, I need to prepare and do it well. And quick. I thought as I tapped my fingers on the table, thinking through hundreds of ideas. I needed a persona and a method of feeding information to those who needed it without revealing who I was, or even offering anonymity to those who wanted to buy information. If I wanted to do this, I wouldn't be some common informant or snitch. No, I need to be untouchable, hidden, someone whose identity remained unknown, but whose information was always reliable. Suddenly, it was a thrilling, dangerous feeling, an idea, but one that had great potential. If I played my cards right, this could be the foundation of something much bigger than adventuring for coins, or shaking down brothel owners or smuggling flour. Tisk. But first I had to prepare. As for how, first I had to take a bath. Then I had to have something to eat, and a good night's sleep. With a fresh mind, the ideas will come too. Chapter 29, Shade. After visiting one of the bathhouses, it was time to return to our inn without tainting the air within with my stench. Thankfully, Lyra was ready and waited for me with a change of clothes, taking my current ones to wash them out while I went to have a bath. It was already late at night when we walked into our rented room, and I shut the door, sliding the latch into place before letting out a breath of tiredness. You should rest. She smiled at me, making me shake my head as there were some things we had to discuss. Looking at her in the dimly lit room, the flickering light of a single oil lamp casting shadows on the right side of her face, I knew I needed a second set of ears and eyes to review my plans and possibly notice points that I missed or just didn't think about. And at the moment, I only trusted her. So, with another shrug, I sat down on the edge of our bed while she did the same, watching my face and trying to read my thoughts. Judging by that look, I'm guessing it wasn't just rats down in the sewers, she asked, raising an eyebrow. Her voice was light, but her sharp eyes betrayed her curiosity, and a bit of fear, too. What happened? Is it trouble? No trouble, I think. I answered while shaking my head, running a hand through my hair, which was still damp from submerging myself in a wooden tub. No, I took care of the rat folk well enough. But I found something else. Something valuable. Really? Where is it? That alone caught Lyra's attention. She was already thinking about what I could have found down there, and I watched as ideas ran past behind her eyes, making her imagination run wild. It made me smile, hearing her enthusiastic voice. Valuable how? They are physically valuable, but I think we can do better with a different approach than hogging the stuff for ourselves. I began as I pulled a scrap of parchment from my pocket and laid it out for her on the bedside table, smoothing out the creases with my fingers. Then I grabbed a piece of charcoal from the drawer and began sketching the emblem I had seen on the crates. They were crates, at least 4 of them, maybe more, tucked away in a part of the sewers that shouldn't have had any recent traffic. Out of the way, out of sight. And they had this insignia on them. "Have you seen it while walking around?" I asked, not saying more so the extra information wouldn't skew her answer. I waited for her response while she studied the crude sketch, her brow furrowing as she traced the lines with her finger. "Number I didn't." She shook her head in the end. "I didn't go far to not get lost. Should I ask around while you are away tomorrow?" "No need," I continued, scratching my chin. "I checked around after I got back. It belongs to Garen and Sons, a merchant operation in the city. As for how big they are, I don't know. My guess is that they can't be amongst the big ones, or they wouldn't be robbed." "Robbed?" She flinched. "Stolen goods." "Yep, from one of their transfers that got hit by thieves recently. Lost a shipment of potions." "Potions?" she repeated as she let out a low whistle, her lips curling into a sly smile. "So you found stolen goods?" "Exactly." I nodded, and my voice dropped, my tone growing more serious. "And that's when I realized something. We should not take it. It is hot goods and could land us in trouble. Who do we pawn it off to? We are too new in the city. What if we get locked up because we mess up?" But then it came to me. Information like this, it should be worth enough money to make a profit from it, without the added risk and hassle to pawn it off to someone else and hope they don't stab us in the back. The merchants want their stolen goods back, and they'd pay to know where they are. I never would have thought about that. Lyra tilted her head, her expression shifting from amusement to contemplation. "You're talking about selling the information. Sounds easier and safer." "Easier? Yes. Safer? Not exactly." I nodded, my fingers drumming lightly on the bedside table. "That is why we have to be smart about it. If I just walk up to them and tell them where their stolen crates are, they'll think I'm involved. Or worse, the thieves might hear about it and come looking for me. They could also force me to tell it for free, holding a sword against my throat." "Ugh." Lyra grimaced, her fingers holding onto the edge of her skirt, wrinkling the fabric. "They could do that, couldn't they?" "I bet they would. Just so they can skip out on paying." "So what's your plan?" "Well," I took a deep breath, my mind racing as I laid out the details that I had been going over since the idea struck me. "I need to be a ghost in this scenario. No face, no name, leave nothing for them to trace." I thought about leaving a message offering the information for a price. They pay first, then they get the location. "That's a start," Lyra agreed, biting her lower lips. "But you're missing a few things. First off, how do you get the message to them without drawing suspicion?" "I was thinking of using a street urchin," I explained, answering her question quickly, already prepared for it. "Pay a kid to deliver the note, someone who doesn't know me, just a go-between. That way there's no direct tie back to us. I'll hire the one." She added, "With a bit of touch-up, I can transform myself to look a bit different. Then, even if they are nasty enough to hurt a kid, the description of me won't give out much, and it will cover you even more." "Thanks," I agreed, not refusing her help at all. "No need." Lyra nodded with a blush, her fingers relaxing on the edge of her clothes. "Good that I can be useful. But what about the message itself? If it's too obvious, they might ignore it and take it to the guards, or worse, think it is a trap. And then, not even entertain the idea of paying for it." "I'll make it cryptic but clear enough for them to understand," I said, thinking out loud. Then I grabbed a fresh piece of parchment and a quill, dipping it into the inkwell. Something like, "Your lost goods have been seen." I will need a code name. Yeah. The Shade can help you find them, for a price. Leave payment at the base of the eastern watchtower by dawn, inside the hollow tree. If you agree, place a red ribbon on the warehouse door before midnight. Could work, Lyra murmured, her eyes flashing in the lamplight. Shade, huh? Dramatic. It needs to sound like an alias, I said, a slightly embarrassed smile forming on my lips, something that makes them believe I've done this before. If they think I'm just some random nobody, they won't take the deal. A bit of theatrical flavor can help that. Lyra tapped her fingers against her thighs, her expression turning thoughtful. All right, say they take the bait. They put up the ribbon. How do we get the money without getting caught? We could hire another urchin. I mused as I met her gaze, knowing that part was the most risky. I have no better idea, Lyra, but if we find a kid who we can put up to it, we would have a good chance. If they don't run off with it. Lyra narrowed her eyes, her shy demeanor fading as she considered the risks. And what if it's a trap, and the kids get caught? That's one option. I shrugged. Hopefully someone like that would know the streets and escape with the goods. Escape with it. That could also happen, she warned me, and then we won't see any of the gold. I know. I nodded, hearing her fears. It is a risk, a gamble, but honestly, that is the best I can do for now. If it works, it will be the foundation on which to build upon. If the kid does it, we can reward him with the cash, spread the word, and then next time they will know what to expect. Build up a loyal little rat's nest that knows better and buys their loyalty. And do it anonymously. Of course, I repeated, crossing my arms, I am not so trusting to reveal our identity to them either. Their loyalty would be to their pockets anyway. Maybe some would become loyal to us in time, but that depends on how we do it in the future. Yes, that is true. She considered it for a moment, then nodded, her expression easing. All right, then what? Say we get the money. How do we get them the information? I'll leave a second message at a different location, I clarified, my voice hushed but honestly excited. This was exciting, and I didn't want to lie or say otherwise. I kind of enjoyed the thrill. We would place the information somewhere ahead of time, preferably right when we make the first contact. Once we have the payment, I'll place another note in the hands of a different urchin. Send the kid in with the information, thanking them for the business. Well, besides the two biggest issues, the question being whether they are willing to pay ahead of time or if the kids are escaping with the money. It does sound fine. She exhaled slowly, nodding again. You've actually thought this through. I have been doing that for the whole day, I said, my tone tinged with a mix of determination and hope it would go as imagined. If this works, it could be the start of something bigger too. This city has a ton of merchants and different groups, including thieves and nobles. I bet no matter which part of the city we look at, they all thrive on secrets. And I'm starting to think that these secrets might be the most valuable currency here. And the most dangerous, Lyra muttered, her eyes trembling for a moment, biting her lips once again. You're starting to sound like a real information broker. Oh? Those are real here, I asked, without thinking, letting it slip out. I don't know if they are here or not, Lyra mumbled, playing with her hair, but I heard it from my parents. When they were adventurers, they usually visited one and had to pay a large sum to get ahead with their missions. Not bad. Maybe I am going to be one, I welcomed the thought, a faint smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. That does sound nice. Well, if this goes well, we will need to build on it. Make more contacts and find ways to learn things before others do. But one step at a time. We should worry about that after this goes as planned. Yeah, first let's get the money. Lyra pursed her lips, knowing there were way too many ifs in my plans. Instead, she yawned while stretching her arms above her head. All right, let's set this in motion. Tomorrow. A good night's sleep does sound nice. I agreed, mimicking her yawn, reaching for a fresh piece of parchment and a quill. But I'll do the letter first while the idea is still fresh in my mind. As I carefully penned the words, keeping my script as nondescript as possible and trying to make it sound like this was a regular occurrence for me, I felt the same kind of excitement brewing in my chest that had been circling me all day. This could be a type of future where I could be in control. Chapter 30, Setting Up. Lyra and I had spent the following day scouting the location where we could initiate the deal. This meant that the first task was to choose where the exchange would take place. It had to be somewhere public enough to prevent ambushes, yet discreet enough that Varen and Sons wouldn't feel watched. The location needed to strike a delicate balance, visible enough to deter foul play, but obscure enough to avoid drawing attention from third parties, and from where we could observe and follow the one we will hire to retrieve the payment. It wasn't easy, being new to the city, but we managed to narrow down the possibilities by nighttime. In the end, we decided on a small, somewhat less popular shrine near one of the smaller market's edges in the western part of town, quite away from the inn we were staying at to make it extra safe. At first glance, the shrine seemed abandoned, with its stone steps cracked and weeds growing between them. When we passed by, a few beggars and drifters occasionally took shelter there, but no one paid much attention to them. Later on, asking around, we found out it was because that particular shrine was supposed to be the gathering ground of such people, kept around and open for those who were desperate. Honestly, it was perfect, neutral ground, inconspicuous, and easy to monitor from a distance. If we hire an urchin to be there, nobody would even bat an eye. "This place has seen better days," Lyra remarked, crouching to examine the shrine's weathered stone basin when we visited, choosing a point when we saw no beggars loitering around it. The place was chipped and stained, having multiple perfectly shaped holes around to make a drop-off as if it was placed here, directly for what I needed. "You think they'll actually come and do it?" "No idea, but I do believe that they'll come," I answered, my voice low as I scanned the surrounding area, trying not to sound too loud. Who knows if another beggar was somewhere around here, sleeping in some hidden spot we didn't know about. They're probably desperate, or at least I do hope so that they are, because desperate people take risks. "Like we do?" Lyra asked as she straightened, brushing dirt from her hands with a smile. "No, we are being opportunistic here," I replied with a half-joke. "Let's hope they're not desperate enough to do something stupid, though." "Yeah, that would be nice." I nodded, looking at the old main shrine where a cracked round stone stood, carved in the shape of a fat cat. "Maybe we should pray a little." "For luck?" "Why not?" She giggled, following me, although I had no idea what kind of prayer would be appropriate. But a bit of extra luck, even if it isn't real, would be helpful. I did reincarnate after all, so God could be listening in on us. Anyway, next, we needed a safe way to deliver my message. That meant it was time to hire some street urchins. It wasn't hard. There were plenty of orphans and young kids who moved unseen in Velgrada, running errands, delivering notes, and listening in on conversations to gain some money. One of them could be paid to carry the letter, unaware of its true significance, and probably do it safely, as someone has to be a total psycho to hurt a child. Still, to avoid connecting the kid back to us, Lyra would be the one handling it, while being disguised. We can risk nothing. Surprisingly, that part took longer than I expected. The sun had already dipped lower in the sky, casting elongated shadows across the city, when Lyra finally changed into an oversized hooded cloak of mine. To sell the look, I slightly dirtied her clothes to make her blend in with the poorer folk of the city. Her hair was dyed into a more sandy color, and her face hid behind painted lines that made her look even older. For a final touch, she smeared a touch of soot on her face and bound her hair tightly, making herself look less like an adventurer and more like a hard-working woman or a beggar. Seeing the finished product, I watched her with a smirk as she turned in front of me, posing and smiling. "How do I look?" she asked, her voice muffled slightly by the hood and scarf she wore now. "Like someone I wouldn't want to bump into in an alley," I replied, my tone teasing, but my eyes remained serious. "Perfect. Still, be careful. Don't use your actual voice either. Try to sound rough." I'll keep that in mind," she muttered and gave me a small smile before heading out, ensuring me with his eyes that it would go smoothly. Finding an urchin was easy. Choosing a boy who seemingly was young enough to lack the experience to swindle us, Lyra drifted near him. He was young and fast, and from what we observed, he was used to delivering messages. At the moment, out of work, he was sitting on a crate at the edge of an alley and idly tossing pebbles at the street. His clothes were patched and frayed, but even from my spot, tens of meters away, I noticed that his eyes were sharp, darting around as if constantly looking for a chance to offer his services to possible clients. Maybe that is why he wasn't taken aback when Lyra approached him casually, offering a copper coin as she crouched beside him. "You deliver messages?" "Hmm?" The boy eyed her warily, flicking his gaze to the coin and then back to her face, which was half hidden behind her hood. "It depends on where and how many letters." "It is a simple job," Lyra said, keeping her voice low. "Take this one letter to Garen and Sons trade house, hand it to one of their men, say it's important, then leave." She had already withdrawn the copper coin, and instead she held up a silver piece between her fingers, sweetening the deal. "Do it right, and this is yours." The boy snatched the letter quickly, tucking it into his tunic as if he was offered heaven for such an easy job. "You got it," he said, then darted off, disappearing into the maze of streets with the agility of someone who had spent his entire life navigating the city's underbelly. He was indeed a good choice. Now we had to wait for the next phase. At the Garen and Sons trade house, the atmosphere had been tense since the day their supposedly safe route was hit, and they were robbed blind. They had already spent a lot of time trying to find out who did it, but they only ran into walls. The only thing they could fume about was the thought that it had to be done by one of their competitors, wanting them gone from the city. Inside their candlelit main office, 4 men sat around a heavy wooden table, the air thick with their collective frustration and with the smoke coming from their pipes and cigarettes. It was the only vice that could keep their nerves from snapping, as they couldn't afford to get drunk, not when there was still a chance to make it right. The deadline for delivery was still a week away. Marcus Veron, the head of the operation and namesake of their group, drummed his fingers against the wood, his jaw clenched so tight that his teeth croaked under the pressure. He was a broad man in his 40s, with the weathered look of a warrior merchant who had fought all his life to carve out his current place in the city's trade circles. Then there was his younger brother, Willem, his closest advisor, who was seated beside him, arms crossed tightly. Across from them sat Rellan, Marcus's son, who was also the foreman, and a nervous clerk named Edvin, who Willem adopted into the family. "That shipment was supposed to be secured," Willem muttered, his voice tight with anger. "They have already gone through this multiple times, but with no change in their situation. It always came back to it." "Tell that to the bastards who took it," Rellan replied, shaking his head and pinching the bridge of his nose. His hands were calloused, his face lined with the stress of managing the warehouse and trying to take everything to inventory, because if they ran out of time and their client didn't get the goods, they will need to compensate him somehow. Our guards were outnumbered. Those who did it were professionals, not street thugs. They knew exactly what to hit, when, where, and they left no witnesses. "Fuck them." Marcus exhaled sharply, the grinding sound of his teeth cutting through the room like a butcher's knife. "I don't care how good they were. The real problem is that Lord Denvar himself ordered those potions. Our first contact with the nobility in this shithole. If we don't recover them soon, our contract is finished. And if Denvar pulls out..." He trailed off, letting the weight of his words sink in. "We can forget making a business with anyone worthwhile in any of the 7 cities." They all knew what that meant. Their entire business could collapse overnight, meaning that whoever did it was probably after just that, to see them fail. Marcus was about to speak up again, but their conversation was interrupted by a sharp knock on the door. Edvin jumped slightly before getting up and opening the door, revealing a young, scrappy-looking boy. "Letter for Garen and Sons," the urchin announced, waving the parchment. "Real important." "Sorry, boss." But he slipped through. A guard gasped, appearing behind the kid in a rush, pale from fear. But a letter? What was happening? This was weird. Realizing something wasn't adding up, Edvin took the note before the others would explode, their tempers overflowing already. The moment he did so, the kid just giggled, and then with quick feet he dodged the coming guards while sprinting away like a slippery eel. "Close the door," Marcus ordered, also realizing something was about to happen. "And go catch that kid." While the guards were scrambling, Edvin quickly flipped the envelope over. There was no sender's name, only a single word scrawled in rough but deliberate handwriting. Shade. "What is this?" Willem muttered as Edvin handed it to Marcus, who broke the seal and unfolded the paper. "I don't know, but let's not dance around it." He snorted as he read it aloud, his voice steady but laced with tension on what they would hear. "To the merchants of Garen and Sons, I know where your stolen goods are. For a fair price, I will tell you where to find them. If you want them back, bring 200 gold to the abandoned shrine near the Eastern Market before sundown tomorrow. Drop the payment in the stone bowl left of the main building under the shade of the red roof. If you comply, you'll get your second letter shortly after. If not, the thieves will move the goods, and your chance of recovering what they took will be lost. Whoever you send him alone. No guards, no tricks. If I sense a trap, the deal is off." Shade. A heavy silence fell over the room for a straight minute before finally one of them had enough of it. "Is this a fucking joke?" Willem scoffed, his voice rising. "Some street rat trying to swindle us. Burn that shit. I bet the bastards who took it are just mocking us." "If it is a prank, they chose a damn good time to do it," Rellan muttered, leaning back in his chair. His tone was grim. "Sounds like someone with real information." "Are you sure?" Willem snorted. "If they indeed know where it is, they would take it for themselves. Or ask for more gold. 200? Really? That's cheap, dirt cheap, so cheap that this has to be fake." "I'm not so sure," Marcus whispered as he stared at the letter, tapping his finger against the table. "Shade. Never heard of them before." "They could be." Edvin shifted nervously, his hands fidgeting with the edge of his sleeve. "People who don't know what they have. Maybe they just witnessed it and figured out who the crates belong to. Or maybe they aren't after gold. They could have already moved the goods, and we are paying for empty boxes if we go through with this deal," Rellan added, thinking about it. "Or they want the gold and maybe our cooperation in the future," Edvin said again, voicing his ideas, but they all knew it was simply guesswork. 200. Still, a lot to simply throw it away. Willem bemoaned, but his voice was already telling him he would do it if they agreed to it. "Not compared to what we'll lose if we don't recover that shipment," Marcus stated, his voice cutting through the room like a whip. He leaned back in his chair, his expression darkening as he weighed the risks. "If they do have real information, we have no choice but to take the risk. We are running out of time." "It could be the thieves themselves setting a trap," Willem said warningly, his voice tight with suspicion, "luring us in." "Possibly," Marcus admitted, his tone just as heavy. "But they don't ask for that much gold. If they wanted to lure us into a trap to rob us a second time, they could have just added another 0 to it. Instead, they want us to drop it off and wait. So we can also put someone on the gold, trailing it, or the one who takes it away." "So?" Rellan asked, his voice gruff. "What's the plan?" "Well," Marcus folded the letter and stood up, his presence commanding the room, knowing it was time to act. "We go along with it, for now. I'll handle the drop personally, but we'll be watching. If this shade tries anything, we'll be ready."